Welcome to Our College Your Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. This is the next in our series of thought leader interviews. This special series of interviews is designed to help prepare college leaders for a future visioning activity taking place in summer 2021. We are adding all of these interviews where the participants have allowed it for our entire college community to hear. In this episode, Mitch Daniels, president of Purdue University, shared his thoughts on the future of higher education and the future of work. I especially appreciated President Daniels' comments on how COVID has moved education forward in positive ways despite the many challenges of the pandemic. I know that our audience will find thoughts on the future of education as a whole of interest. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listening audience and telling us a little bit about your current agency and your role? And I think for our listeners, it would especially be just interesting to hear your history with Indiana as well.
I'm Mitch Daniels, and for the last 8.5 years, I've served as president at Purdue University. I hope familiar to most in the audience, but a public land-grant university, Indiana's land grant, currently at record size of soon more than 36,000 undergraduates on the West Lafayette campus, as well as 10 or 11,000 graduate students. We, of course, have satellite campuses, regional campuses in the Northwest and Fort Wayne areas. And we now are the owners and sponsors of Purdue Global, an adult education online university, which now has more than 35,000 students. And I've been very grateful over time for many chances to interact with Ivy Tech. I hope to be a supporter of its very important and evolving mission. And so grateful for the chance to exchange a few views here. On the subject of Purdue Global, I'll just point out that to some extent, our entry into the adult education market is a recognition of how important Ivy Tech is too, because the idea that four-year education of the traditional sort is the right answer for everyone, we now know is very, very flawed and an imperfect strategy for a state or an individual. And so offering not just a variety of choices for ways to prepare oneself and educate oneself for productive life, as Ivy Tech has always done for Indiana, is a really urgent matter. And also the need to continue learning, even if one has a great experience the first time around, shelf life of our knowledge is shortening all the time. So I guess that's just another way of saying we appreciate Ivy Tech and its ongoing efforts to find a way for Indiana to deal more successfully with these new challenges.
Absolutely. And I personally appreciate the partnership that I have with Jay Ackridge, your provost, and with Frank Dooley and the team, John Harbour and the team at Purdue Global. We meet with them regularly. So definitely value the partnership that we have with Purdue as well. So I'd love to ask you about, and you alluded to this a little bit in your answer about the role of Purdue. What are some of the big problems that you are trying to solve at Purdue? And just you personally, what are the things that you look at as big challenges we need to solve together?
I think a principal reason that I decided to accept Purdue's invitation to come here was the sense that it can be a unique asset in an information economy driven more than ever before by technology. I always tell the Indiana General Assembly, if Indiana didn't have a Purdue University, you'd be trying to invent one. And by our land-grant heritage, the audience, I think, will know, we were told to specialize in agriculture and the mechanic arts, meaning the tools as they were understood at that time of a young, growing, vibrant economy. All right, so the definition of those terms has changed, but the assignment hasn't. And so today, agriculture means precision agriculture and biotechnology and things at the forefront of science. And mechanic arts means computer science and engineering and of the highest caliber. So we've been investing very heavily in that. We will be training an unprecedented number of Hoosiers as well as students we attract from elsewhere in STEM disciplines this fall. Almost 2/3, maybe more than 2/3 of our undergraduates and a higher percentage of our graduate students are in a STEM discipline. So this is this is Purdue's moment. The economy of today, the world of today, fits our mission if we can prove to be good at it. So that's a principal topic. of conversation here always.
What's an interesting trend that you've discovered with your stakeholders that you think is going to change the way in which we work?
We all know that enterprises of all kinds, Purdue, Ivy Tech, every business you can name, everywhere, was already changing, going to change more rapidly now. This technology you and I are using at this very moment has come light years in the last 12 months. So I think it's going to be very, very exciting. The world of education is changing. We already were teaching a substantial amount of what we did online. It's going to be much more in the future. We already had a lot of our students spending a co-op working year or at least an internship while they were studying. There's going to be a lot more of that, and online will make that easier to do without losing time on the educational front. At work, a big majority of our employees, I'm sure it's the same for you, Kara, have been working at home pretty successfully. You know, we're about to enter here into the annual performance reviews for all our thousands of coworkers. And this year, in addition to the typical questions about, how do you think you did? And let's look at your goals and what are we going to do together next year? We're going to want to ask questions about how did you work this year? How much was remote and how much was here? What do you think is the best arrangement for our unit? What mix? What we're not going to do, I'm just certain, is go back to exactly like it was. Everybody come in the office 5 days or more a week. The questions we'll want to try to answer well are what works, first of all, work best for a given part of Purdue and therefore Purdue as a whole. And to the extent we can, what's best for the individual? What would they prefer? What fits their life at this point? And we'll try to blend those if we can. So that's going to be a new challenge, but one that I think if organizations like ours can get it right, will move us all very far ahead. I mean, I'll give you a very obvious example. We've been growing, and so there's a constant clamor for more space and buildings and so forth. And we're always trying to use the space we have more wisely. Here's a huge opportunity. 57% of our office space was vacant all year long. We don't need to fill it all back up.
Right.
And that, what can we do with the capacity that we have liberated? So I think that's a big category. I don't presume yet to understand what the right answers are. I just know that going back to the status quo ante is not it. So we'll all have to, maybe we can all share the learnings as we explore those questions.
Absolutely. Obviously, Purdue has been at the forefront of the return to campus movement with COVID. I only want to spend one question talking about COVID specifically, but what do you think our industry is going to look like immediately following COVID and then 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, I hope it looks different because it needed to anyway. Our industry, if that's a good way to talk about it has been one of the slowest to change, slowest to evolve, slowest to adopt new technology. Frankly, one of the most reactionary sectors that I've ever experienced. And if we don't find new and better ways to deliver value, you're at Purdue for 8 years, we've been talking about value. You probably know that we've prioritized student affordability. We've held tuition and fees actually lower than they were 8 years ago. We think that's a big part of the reason that we've been growing while many, many competitors are struggling to maintain enrollment. So I hope that we will all be propelled by the recent pandemic to get busy on things we needed to anyway. No, I think the sector will look different because finally, belatedly, economic pressure is really going to visit itself on the sector. This gusher of federal money, which they found some way to print, don't ask me on that, may anesthetize and sort of insulate things for a while. But the fundamental realities, I don't have to tell you, are challenging. We're not having enough children in this country, and the pool even of 18-year-olds is flattening. Many, many more people have looked at the expense versus the value of 4-year education as we've known it and said, is there not some better way? Many businesses, including some of the best known, are saying we're no longer going to require a college or a bachelor's degree. We've been using it. If they're honest, they know they've been using it as a proxy.
Right.
It doesn't prove that. We think a Purdue degree does, but a lot of degrees, it's not clear that the student learned a lot or grew a lot. But that if they got in at all and they stuck it out to the end, then they probably have, some natural innate ability. And so, but many prominent companies have said, we don't care about that. Show us you can do what we need done. You can code, or you have a skill we are searching for. So for all those reasons, I do believe that necessity is going to drive some overdue changes, and they have to go in the direction of greater efficiency. I hope greater rigor, proven value. We've operated at Purdue for 8.5 years now under the slogan, higher education at the highest proven value. Value comprising high quality per dollar spent, proven meaning, we're willing to stake ourselves that somebody who comes and spends that money here leaves much better prepared for a productive life.
Right. Tell me what you think, because I want to continue the conversation with you a little bit about this. How does Purdue University look different in 10 years? What does it look like a decade from now?
All I can give you is a guess, but you're asking a great question. Yep. We're asking ourselves all the time. Yep. I think, first of all, it'll be a much more flexible place. We've been moving this direction anyway. Many of our degrees, we've now restructured. They're available in 3 years. We're trying to do everything we can to help students move more quickly if they're interested in doing so. Our average time to degree has fallen below 4 years now, and I think it can fall much further. So, but also more flexible. I'd mentioned mixing work experience, related work experience, with the education path that a student has chosen. I think we'll be doing a lot more of that. I think that I have to believe we will continue to emphasize our long suit, and that is the STEM disciplines, and turn out the kind of talent that the nation and our state needs so much. I do believe, we still believe, that a residential experience can add value. If we can't demonstrate that, then we will be left behind, as I'm afraid a lot of other schools will be. So I don't foresee a completely online world. Now, I got to tell you, some of our brilliant people here, have already devised some virtual laboratory experience, for instance. We used to say, well, one thing you could never get away from is coming to the lab and working. Well, some of our people who are at the forefront of augmented reality or its kin are finding ways to do that. But we still think that at a blend of online, residential, and probably experiential, as they say, education, carefully, individually crafted, will have to become good at delivering tailored education at scale, can make for a viable institution years out. But if I knew that answer right now, you and I'd go start a company.
That's right.
And know we had something.
Absolutely. We've talked about this a little bit, but I'd love for you to spend a little bit more time on it. How do you think the future of work, and maybe not just to the higher education space, but to the students that we are preparing for the workplace, what do you think the future of work is going to look like in 5 to 10 years?
I think we all know it'll be much less place-based. Now, I think some of us may be overestimating how far things will move in that direction. There'll probably be much less of this. We're already seeing, to me, an exciting possibility. We're working very directly on this sort of a brain gain opportunity to bring talented people to Indiana. We don't have to necessarily find a job for them now. They can keep the job they had back somewhere else.
Absolutely.
If they want to come here and live among friendly people in a low cost and pleasant state. So I think we'll see clearly a lot more of that. But there's no question that we all know that at least the best jobs of tomorrow will predominantly be those that require a lot of education and a lot probably of technological grasp. Now, I think that, and you'll know best, but that Ivy Tech, I think, has an important potential here. there are many, many very high quality jobs that do not require a Purdue degree or an anywhere degree.
Right.
Going begging right now. I'm thinking of many of those proud vocations that will always be in demand.
Absolutely.
And I think maybe we've wandered away from that a little bit over recent decades, the everybody should go to college notion. Right. And as that needle moves back, as people question that, both from an outcome standpoint and an expense standpoint, maybe there's a little bit of back to the future here. I don't know, but I do think Indiana and other places need high quality training in the skilled trades and the skilled professions that we don't necessarily prepare for people here for at Purdue.
Right. I think it's, I'll editorialize for a second since you sort of invited it. I think it's the perception issue in Indiana, especially, that Ivy Tech is less than. And it isn't. Ivy Tech is a pathway to a wonderful job, a wonderful career, and a wonderful life for your family, just as Purdue is. And understanding that those two are equivalent, they just lead to different careers, I think is the way we have to help reconceptualize.
I mean, it's you'll know best, but at a distance, again, I see a real opportunity here. So once again, we're a manufacturing intensive state. That was by design. In my last job, we looked at it and said, do what you're good at. And I think that's been the right decision. Somebody's got to make things in this country, and Indiana's the leader. Now, a lot of there's some good jobs going big in there, and increasingly, employers are saying, I don't need to see a Purdue degree necessarily to fill that job. I think there may be an opening for Ivy Tech as you match up. I know you work on this, what you're teaching with the needs of the workplace, and get people there sooner. The idea that in the past has been appealing, and I know in many other states it's worked out reasonably well, to see community colleges 2 years toward 4. And I don't want to discard that, but I'm beginning to think, or I have begun to think, that that's really not the future here.
Right.
That the right 2-year degree or training program,
or 1-year degree, or 6-month,
or 1-year degree, may be just right for people to get them into not only get them into a satisfying and remunerative career, but don't overlook the value of getting them there 1 or 2 years sooner.
Absolutely.
The income the person earns compounded over life turns into real money.
Absolutely.
This is 1 year. One reason we have pressed the 3-year degree options. It's not just the money a student can save if they move through here more quickly.
Right.
An extra year or more out in the world is very, very valuable.
Absolutely.
From an income and wealth standpoint, and from an experiential learning standpoint. So, like all of us, I think there's probably some modifications you're going to decide to make. But I do think if you get it right, there's real opportunity.
Absolutely. I want to close just on this same topic and ask you one final question, which is, what do you think higher education and specifically Ivy Tech should be doing to prepare for that future?
The same thing people need to do even in non-crisis times, and that is, be resolved to doubt your own infallibility, recognize that things that have worked well aren't necessarily and automatically suited to the future. I mean, it's an axiom, seems to me, and this is a higher ed problem. Obviously, if things have been going well, people say, why would you change anything? And maybe the jolt we've all just received and the extra pressure that it has brought is going to speed this along. But, those who stand still, that I preached this to Indiana for many, many years, you stand still in this world, you get passed up, you tread water, you sink. And so I do see these opportunities we've been discussing, Kara, but not everybody's going to get there. You want to get to those new approaches successfully before your competition does. Absolutely.
All right. Anything else you'd like to share with our community before we wrap up today?
I'll just say one other thing. I think any of us who are lucky enough right now to interact with younger people, and Ivy Tech obviously helps people across some age span. But still, we need to, where we can, both encourage them, but also press them to their real potential. And while reminding them as we can how lucky we are, how fortunate we are to live in this era, what we consider problems are so small compared to what our predecessors faced. We believe here at Purdue that in addition to a great education, we want students to leave here a little more resilient than they came in, a little more understanding that, hey, if you're going to go out and do things, if you're going to make something better of yourself or some organization you join, there are going to be problems. There are going to be setbacks. Yep. There are going to be moments of pain. But that's what you're going. But it's worth it, and you can do it. So you didn't ask for a sermon on grit, but I think you would probably have the same impression I do, that
I would.
Many young people these days sell themselves a little bit short.
Yes.
And pull back a little bit from taking on things that they really are capable of accomplishing or surmounting, but they've got to decide it's up to them and not some help that they flee to at the first sign of trouble.
Absolutely. We all need to think a little bigger and a little more broadly. Yeah. All right. Well, President Daniels, thank you so much for taking time to visit with me today and with our community. I appreciate it very much. Well,
good luck. Indiana has so much riding on Ivy Tech, and we know all the issues you're facing, but where we can help, we want to, and we're really rooting for you to answer these questions successfully and win big.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Our College, Your Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. You can connect with me on Twitter at KNMTweets. Our producer is Sarah Ferguson. For this special series of episodes, we want to thank our guest producers, Gretchen Keller and Kristen Moreland. You can reach us by email at ourcollegeyourvoices@ivytech.edu. If you're a member of our Ivy Tech faculty and staff, please join our Microsoft Teams listener community. I send out instructions to our entire college community on how to do that every Thursday. Our website is www.ivytech.edu/podcast. You'll find links to show notes and more on that page. Production assistance for this and every episode provided by Becky Campbell and the Ivy Tech Community College Creative Services team. Our podcast concept is by Matthew Pittman. Theme music and post-production services provided by the incredibly talented Jen Yeats at the Brassie Broadcasting Company. We'll talk to you next time on Our College, Your Voices.